curtain? We're gonna go behind the blue curtain. Right, and we hit. Wait, no, I want to make sure that we're working on the other one as well. Hello, welcome to Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about Plunderstorm. Before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast is very simple. We like to talk about games, okay? And what game is more core to this podcast than World of Warcraft? Actually, if you think about it. You know, it's funny. Really, that's actually super true because the podcast started in 2016, which is when we both came back to the game for Legion, right? The Legion expansion. And basically, we've been back. Well, I don't know. I guess you kind of.
I dropped out for BFA. I skipped almost all of BFA.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I would say we came back for Pandaria, didn't we?
Yeah, we came back for WoD. We did the end of Pandaria into WoD, right? And then we fell off in WoD, and then we came back again for Legion, I think.
Yes, yeah.
And this is when this is when I bound to the game really hard. I found Sanctuary, like our whole friend group, right? You know, all of that happened at the end of WoD going into Legion, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the other day that Cataclysm Classic is coming out. I'm like, what is happening, right? Like,
Cataclysm Classic is that. So they're the complicated thing is they're accelerating the pace of these, right? Cataclysm Classic is going to be over in a year.
Oh, is it?
Is what they showed the timeline for when they're releasing stuff, and it looks like it's going to last about a year, and so that's been true. So basically, all of the all of the previous sort of expansions, like classic expansions, they're coming out faster and faster these days.
So at some point, is Classic just going to merge with retail?
I guess so. I don't know. I mean, it's funny because, we're past the golden era.
Yeah.
Right? The golden era of, Burning Crusade and like Lich King, these were sort of like untouchable. It's like doing a remake of like Star Wars: A New Hope, right? And so now I think we're in the spicy period where they could make some real swings for the fences. Maybe Mists, right? People expect Mists to be a popular classic expansion. Everybody really likes the, like the Mist expansion or whatever. They're doing this whole Mists remix thing in retail. Yeah, I think there's a real question of what happens when we get to Warlords of Draenor, where we know there's a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor, right? And who knows, maybe the World of Warcraft team decides we're going to put in that Shattrath raid that we couldn't get to, kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be something, right? Like,
there's a difference between like the sort of remaster nature of some of the, some of the like we've seen remakes, right, and remasters and whatever, right? And it would just be really interesting to see that for a live game. I don't think we've ever seen that for like a live game that goes back to kind of a period of its own design and development and refines that 10 years later. Like that is an unheard of kind of.
Yeah, I would say the closest thing is like they pulled some Destiny 1 raids into Destiny 2, but like they were basically pulled in like unchanged because everybody loved those raids. And it's like not like Destiny 2 is a much different game than Destiny 1, right? Like,
yeah, you know what? It's funny because I was having a very weird conversation with somebody else about classic League of Legends, where they said something like, "Would you go back and play League of Legends at its height for you?" Which I said was like season 3 or season 4 or something. I don't remember what I said. But I just said something like, now we're on League of Legends season 15, right? Or 14 or something, right? And I was like, God, that's like actually a really, like, would I play classic League of Legends? And the answer is probably no, because I just, I don't know, I have such virulent hatred for that game. But who knows? Yeah.
I mean, no, it's funny because like I watched a video. So there's this YouTuber who does like it's called like Stories of Dota, and it's just like going over the changes to different heroes. And I didn't play a lot of Dota 2, but I did play a lot of Dota 1, right? So like watching him go over like, I got hooked in by this video about techies, and they basically turned techies into like boring paladin shit because it's a competitive game now instead of like, the meme storm that Dota 1 was is a Warcraft 3 game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but like they did axe And I was like, I remember Legionnaire and Heroes of Newerth, right? Like having a couple different things that mixed it up. It's like, and like I was looking at the comments, like, yeah, Heroes of Newerth fixed some of these problems. I was like, oh, I wonder how Han's doing. Han is dead, and there is a community project called like Project Kong, right, or Kongor, because that was the name of their Roshan, or Baron Nashor in LoL terms.
Sure.
And I looked at it, and I thought about sitting in our friend Barry's room in college and just like screaming at my friends. It's like, do I want to reinstall this? Maybe not. Right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know. I have complicated feelings about a lot of that era. But I've really I feel like I've burned the bridge with like League of Legends in a way that, and some of those other games in a way that I have never burned a bridge with any of these other titles, right? I was just as like insane about titles like Payday, or I don't know, like Europa Universalis, or even like Skyrim. You know, like when Skyrim came out, I went to Barry's room and we played that for basically 3 days straight, right? I have very fond memories of all of those games, and I can go back to those games. There are a few games that I like feel like I can never go back to in the way that I feel like I can never go back to League of Legends. Do you know what I mean? And it's interesting because WoW is sort of like one of these games that I have very fond memories of, kind of all of my time in WoW. Even when I theoretically disliked the game and I quit and I got bored and all this other sort of stuff, I still think about, like, I don't remember quitting WoW. I remember having fun in WoW, if that makes sense. But I never remember having fun in League of Legends.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I'm still tempted to go back every once in a while. It may or may not be installed on my machine at this point. I literally don't know. Let me see. It doesn't look like it's installed on my machine right now, but every once in a while I'll download it and then like not play it, and then eventually uninstall it when I want to make space for something.
Yeah, sure.
But there is like kind of a thirst for like that like I fell in love with the MOBA format, right? With Dota 1 and Heroes of Newerth, and then I started playing League not because I liked it as much, but because it was like the thing that my friends were playing, right?
I was the big proponent of this. Is the funny thing. I was the big proponent of this. Everybody in our friend group hated League at first. Because there was sort of like an it's for casuals opinion about it.
Most of us were playing Heroes of Newerth, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. And so it was me and it was Barry a lot who were talking about this is so ironic that it's Barry who would go on to build his entire career off of League of Legends, right? It was me and it was Barry. We were arguing constantly about Heroes of Newerth over League. But I was playing League with my friends from high school. Many of whom have been like guests on this podcast, and I've talked about it in like a bunch of different ways, right? And then eventually just kind of the League crowd. I think it was honestly because I had that access to this other friend group, we could create teams pretty effortlessly, right? Because there was just like a bigger pool of people to play with. And that eventually kind of had League win over.
I think part of the thing that also you wouldn't see is like some people that were in Barry and my house from freshman year, and people I knew from computer science were also playing League, which is like the other push side of that, right? Like, I don't know if you ever played with them much, but like, it was just kind of one of those things. It was like, oh, well,
like Junkie, right? He's an ACM kid, right?
Yeah.
We played all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Junkie's probably the best example of that. Yeah. But yeah, no, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was just the worst of times. There was, down to like, oh man, my clearest memories of League of Legends are, hold on, I'm going to check to see if someone is in the chat at this moment. He is not. Is playing League and like just Charles dying and hearing him like slam his like hands on the desk and like throw his headset and walk away from his computer.
Honestly, I think if I were to pinpoint the black pilling moment for me on League of Legends, it might be. Do you remember the one time where Charles said that he was as good as me in the mid lane? I was so offended that I literally spent an entire workday where I just went through our comparative match histories and I outlined what happens when me and Charles are playing on the same team, right? What's our average KDAs? How often do we win and all this stuff? And the thing that I realized is that my success was not a tipping point factor for winning games. If there was a game where I was doing bad, we were getting stomped into the ground, right? But if there was a game, but most of the games that we lost, I was still doing pretty well. I had a positive KDA, I had a high like CS or whatever. And in most of the games that we won, Charles was still doing pretty poorly. But I had this moment where I was just like, oh my God, I don't matter. Like, I don't matter to the success of our, like, we don't win because of me. I have to be doing good in order to win. And it just felt like I had lost so much agency in that moment.
Well,
It like destroyed my desire to actually play the game.
yeah, well, that is the thing, right? Like that is why it breeds so much toxicity. Is that it's a team game and you rely on your teammates, right? And like you can always offload that response. You know, like oh, we didn't lose because maybe we lost because of our teammates, which sometimes is true. But like you know, you can't win on your own and you can't lose on your own, right? Like you know, it's but that is not Plunderstorm, which is ostensibly
for the first 12 minutes of this podcast. Okay, talking about winning alone and losing with your teammates or whatever, right? Plunderstorm is the new battle royale mode that has just been added to World of Warcraft as a seasonal time limited thing, right?
Yeah.
Plunderstorm is in the game for 6 weeks. It closes next week, a week from tomorrow. And it is a pretty interesting. This is truly unprecedented. WoW has never had anything like Plunderstorm before, right? An entirely separate game mode. Yeah, an entirely separate game mode that lives inside of the WoW client, but that is wholly separate from like your typical character and progression paths, even just like core buttons, right? Like you just like the only buttons that are really the same are camera movements on your mouse and like WASD, right? Everything else is kind of like wildly different. We have obviously been a big fan of battle royales in the past, even though I don't know, I fell off battle royales. I feel like you also fell off battle royales, right? Like there was a while where
I haven't gone hard on like any I haven't gone hard on any of the mainline titles in a while.
But the World of Warcraft team acquired Proletariat, who was the dev studio behind Spelljammers. Spellbreak. God,
which we also reviewed on the show.
Which we also reviewed on this show, and I loved, and then they shut it down, right? But hey, you know what? Listen, they shut it down, fair enough. And we are now living in a world where they have essentially kind of added something close to Spellbreak in World of Warcraft. You're level 40, I'm level 20. So we played a bunch of this, obviously, like probably however, many hours. But did you ever once queue duos or trios?
No.
Wow.
No.
What fueled your it was
just kind of like I was playing. So I have been pursuing the platinum achievement. And my start for that was a lot of kind of like, checking the computer every 3 hours to like see if for various different timers checking things. And in between those things, I would go and do Plunderstorm matches. And so I think there was we had a weird episode a couple of weeks ago, and then we missed a couple episodes. And so like I have been pretty hardcore on like trying to finish out this achievement. Because that I had a bunch of spare time, I just went in there. Also, it's just kind of like it has that like bite-sized thing that all battle royals have. That's kind of like, oh, I want to take a 15-minute break from work. I will go play a Plunderstorm match, right? Combined with that, like the daily kind of thing that it has, right? And also kind of like this kind of like end of the tunnel type of stuff, right? It's like I wanted to at some point. I was like, I don't know when this is going to end, and I don't know when I'm going to lose my attention, but I really want that parrot. So I just like pushed through to the end at some point.
This is very much your aesthetic, right? I was like, man, the pirates have, I want to collect everything. The other day, Drew Bull logged on and he was like, hey man, what are you doing? And I said, pretending I like Plunderstorm. So that I can get the rewards, so that I can get the renown rewards. Like, really, I am so motivated by the collectibles. Which is interesting. I've never oh, I'm sorry. Like PUBG, Apex had a little bit of this, I guess, but it was very different, right? Even like Overwatch, right? Like I'm never really motivated by the collectibles in quite the same way that I was motivated by the collectibles here, just because I care so much about WoW collectibles. I just want to have cool shit on my WoW character, and the FOMO works so insanely well on me. I'm just like, yes, I need this, right?
Yeah, I think part of it is just that WoW has like your collectibles are also very visible, right? Like most most cosmetics in shooters, like especially a first person shooter, you can't see anything, right? Like, who cares, right? Like, and
Yeah, somebody called the skins in Overwatch were like gun skins, right? Because you're in first person.
yeah.
All you do is you see the back of your own gun. That's it, right? The only cool part is maybe at the end of the day, the game, you'll get to play the game or something, and you'll see yourself in third person, or like, I don't know, like in the victory post screen, all of that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, right, when I'm playing World of Warcraft, transmog, mounts, all that stuff is super, super core to the character.
Not only that, but I also think that part of this is that, like, because it's an MMO, all of kind of like the play, like the dress up stuff has been built out pretty significantly. Whereas most BRs, it's like a skin, right? Like, it's like a total game, it's like a total character changing thing, as opposed to, a like customizable thing. Or like we've talked about this, or I don't know if we talked about this on the cast, but no, we've talked about this off cast. Is like, part of what's compelling about transmog is like building it yourself, right? Like no one runs a straight set of like a thing. Like no one like takes the Amir Drasil set and puts all of that on. Right? It's like,
yeah, that's gauche.
Yeah.
That's kitschy.
Yeah. Why would you do that? You've got all these things to work from. You gotta like fit the pieces together in a way that like looks great, right? And I love doing that. And like this, actually, that is the thing that I have found disappointing about this set is it's like hard to meld with other things, right? Like there are other pirate sets, but like it's so ornate that like there's not a lot of like I have a couple of pirate sets already, pirate transmogs already, and I wasn't finding a lot that I could like build out with it, right? Like I could maybe use some of the pieces if I wanted to do like a Vanthyr set or something, to like like it cross pollinates as like vampire stuff, but like as a pirate set, like it is so detailed and also so clearly goes with itself so much better than like the equivalent existing pieces that I'm finding it hard to like build a compelling transmog that isn't just obviously the entire set, right? Like,
that's pretty interesting. I obviously haven't picked up the full set yet. And I haven't even like thought about transmogging it because right now my transmog is all about Farak, not Farak, the Firalath, the legendary axe,
yeah.
right? But yeah, I definitely do think that has a huge. It's also one of those things where because WoW is so long lived, like I still have mounts that I picked up 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. 15 years ago. Right. It adds a level of sort of longevity to my collection that I don't feel like I have with other games. Right. I've played a bunch of Overwatch 2, for instance. And I like Overwatch 2, fair enough. It's a pretty good game. And I played it for, so the mythic skins that I really kind of like wanted. I kind of ground out the seasons the battle pass in order to get those skins or whatever. But at the end of the day, my my connection to my Overwatch collection is much, much less than my connection to my World of Warcraft collection, just because like one of these I've been building for my entire adult life, and the other one, whatever. Like it came out 8 years ago. And if they shut down the Overwatch 2 servers, I probably wouldn't care that much.
Yeah, no, I feel that. It is interesting though because this provides like a level of motivation. I'm gonna go a little bit more into like kind of like the core gameplay stuff that like
sure.
It makes people who hate the game play it, which is I think bad long term, right? Like
oh really interesting. I think it's good actually.
I think it's bad because at some like the most amazing thing to me is has anyone told the guy on the right that the 80s ended years ago? Don't worry about it, boy.
You're going pretty hard for Magnum PI.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry. It was striking to me how early in I started people complaining in the lobby about people doing PvP in the PvP game, right? People in the guild complain, be like, people are so toxic they kill you. It's like, yes, that's how you play the game, right? Like,
Oh, you see, I think this is a brilliant design decision, but I do understand like the friction that you're describing, which is pretty fucking funny. One of the things that I think makes Plunderstorm good and fun is that and this is, by the way, the thing that I think is special to Fortnite. A YouTuber I like, whose name is Errant Signal, has a 40-minute video essay on Fortnite where he sort of talks about this. Where one of the genius things that Fortnite does compared to other battle royales like Warzone, I don't think PUBG really had anything like this. Apex, I think, had these like kind of like quests or whatever. They all have these sort of like quests, these things that you need to do and accomplish in order to like progress your battle pass.
PUBG
Right?
added them eventually, but yeah.
Okay. And so the thing that's clever about Fortnite is Fortnite's quests are usually kind of orthogonal objectives to winning the game, right? It is go to this place and open chests, right? It is complete this little mini game to do a thing on the map, right? Like there's a vault. You know, the example he gives is there's a vault on a map. There's a bank. You can go to the bank, and if you find the bank code or something, you can put it into a computer to open the vault, and there's a good chest in the vault, right? And this is typically not worth anybody's time. It is just a pain to find out what like what the thing is. But if you have a quest to do it, that's actually pretty fun and engaging, right? You drop in this place, you might have to fight some people, but your goal is not kill people. Your goal is I want to open the vault to get in there to complete the quest, right? And he identified this as something that was unique among the battle royales as a way to influence people's kind of like play without necessarily like forcing them to fight each other. Whereas like Warzone is just like kill people, right? Kill people with this gun, kill people in this area, that kind of thing.
And I will say, I think there's a thing that's more important too, which is that like when it's kill people and it's like kill people with a particular weapon, you are making people play less optimally or optimally, not necessarily, but like in a way that they would be less comfortable with to win. And so it's inherently frustrating, right? If you got to get like 5 kills with a pistol and either one, a pistol's like a weaker weapon, or 2, you're just not good with it, right? You're going to be very frustrated with completing that quest. And like, you playing 7 rounds where you don't finish the quest, even though you feel like you have to get your thing done. Like I think that's actually a very important piece of the design of a design to make it like tenable and not terrible feeling.
Yeah. In Plunderstorm, the quests are also orthogonal to, like winning the game. They are, encouraging you to do stuff you would normally be doing because there's this whole PvE aspect, which I think is pretty outside of most other. I can't think of too many. I can't think of too many battle royales. I mean, Spellbreak had them, right? That has sort of like PvE bots that you're kind of like farming and killing. But that's a core part of Plunderstorm, right?
Yeah.
You want to drop in, you want to kill elites. Elites are going to drop your items, and that influences your stuff. And then this creates this sort of fertile ground where you have all these different quests that's like pick up items or, pick up spells or open chests or kill elites or just kill creatures or get plunder, right? All of those objectives, right, are the thing that gives you kind of this core of your plunder, and it's a way to make people feel like they've won even when they lost, right? When you come down and you have the 2 elite quests and you do kill your 2 elites and then you just get immediately stomped into the ground by the party that is 50 yards over who come over and kill you, well, you can go, well, at least I completed my quest, I got my 250.
I think that's part of the problem though, is like you can kill people before that happens, and that's a like I think this is part of the problem is that it is per game, right? It's not like like you don't have quests across games.
Yep.
And as a result, people get really mad if you kill them before they have the opportunity to kill to finish their like mission, because like that's all they care about, right? It's like especially the hardcore PvEers, like I just want to get my mission done, and I don't care if I win past that. Might not even be worth like playing the game past that because I'm not going to do well and I just need to get my doubloons, right? I also think there's a mild problem in that like of the like I think there's like 4 different quests. 3 of them, the optimal thing to do is to land on an elite, because you don't know what it is before you land. And so like the elite, if it's kill 10 creatures, it kills 1 creature. If it's kill 2 elites, you get 1 elite. And if it's loot 3 spells, it's like you get a spell out of that immediately.
Yeah,
so.
If it's 30 plunder, you get a bunch of plunder out of killing elites.
Yeah.
I think in general it is always best because the landing killing a guy is such a huge boon. I can't think of a possible reason to not land on a lead every time, right? Like it is mathematically
Safety.
correct. Yeah.
So this is another problem I have with the game is safety, right? Like if you land and then somebody lands on top of you, they can usually bounce you out and might even be able to steal your spell off the ground. And so you have to be like kind of cognizant of that. Um, Maybe this is a little bit more of a problem in singles because like people are a little bit more spread out and they're not like landing as
Yeah,
groups.
that is pretty interesting. There's people who are more spread out, and you're not landing when you're landing in trios or duos. Duos, there's 30 teams on the map. Trios, there's 20, right? It's pretty common in trios that if you choose a landing spot, nobody else is going there with you, and you can loot the whole place. You're kind of yourself, which is pretty good, right? It kind of gives you that baseline. It lets you complete the quests and everything like that. And it also, I think, means that your first engagements tend to be built. I think early engagements or early spell-less engagements in singles are probably Plunderstorm at its worst, right? Where two people land on a spot, like let's say two people land on an elite, one of them picks up a garbage spell, right? Like some utility spell that basically doesn't matter, right? And they're just mashing R at each other, trying to whittle one another down. Like this is Plunderstorm at its least interesting, most rote, most boring, essentially.
I think the worst is when one person has like a skill shot that can do damage but isn't like guaranteed because it usually ends up in like a long chase that like is satisfying to neither person and like maybe the person gets away, maybe they don't. And you can't just like like something like the missile blast or whatever, right? Like you can at least consistently hit someone. If you can't consistently hit someone, also the WoW kind of like hit detection, like in the general case, is not the greatest thing for like skill shot type stuff. This game, that problem's definitely there a lot. Not even like I'm not. I don't doubt that it's consistent. It's just like not legible, right? Like how far your stuff reaches, right? Like
No, I absolutely feel that. I reviewed a game a long time ago that actually came out. I think it's called Precursor, which was a over-the-shoulder sort of MOBA. And the funny thing is, at the time they had stolen essentially a ton of design from League of Legends. But the thing about League of Legends design is you are isometric, right? So you are essentially looking. You are looking at the flat plane. What's happening when you're over the shoulder is you are looking along the flat plane. And so it's way easier to make a skill shot that is just a line that is essentially graphed X and Y when you're looking down the Z axis, compared to hitting a skill shot when you are looking along, whatever the X axis, right? And you're trying to nail it. I like the skill shot, to be clear. I like the skill shots. I think the designs are great. Mostly this is about visual effects and stuff, and I generally think the skill shots are bigger than they look visually, so you get hits on stuff that you maybe like kind of, if I were to
yeah,
pause and I were to look at the frame, that person's not in that visual effect, but they are getting hit by the ability. This is like one of the secret little pieces of tech that I think that they've added. But
I don't think it's something.
it is less.
They didn't add shit. That's just how WoW spells work. That's how they've always worked, right? Like this is the thing. Is like my fundamental opinion on this game, which is a hell of a thing to get to a half hour into this, is like I would not play this game if it wasn't for the WoW part of it, right? Like I don't think it's
okay.
I don't think it's like outright bad, but it is not nearly good enough to stand toe to toe with any other PR. Like it is, and I don't think this is on anybody else. It's just like being constrained by the WoW engine just makes it so murky. Maybe is the right way to put it, because like the basic attacks are skill shots, right? Like that's actually the one that I have the worst time with, because like it's got like a little bit of range in front of you, but like not a ton, and like you can like. I think you can jump out of the range, right? Like jumping interacts weirdly with it, and it's like super illegible, and you can't quite tell where you're hitting, right? Like, and
It has it is a cone. This is the thing that I
yeah,
didn't quite understand at first. It's a little cone skill shot that's like 2 yards in front of you, basically. Um, and it's pretty easy for people to like move out of it. I find that I get a lot of kills with sort of like the auto attacks as a finishing thing,
yeah,
right? I have stunned somebody, or somebody has like locked something down, or they only have like 2 or 3 hits left, and I send 8 and I land 3, and that's enough to get my kill, right?
yeah.
Most of the damage I did with Searing Axe or whatever, like whatever else.
Yes, I agree.
I think I generally probably agree that the game is kind of fundamentally bad, but it gets so many points from just like not being a real game in a way, right? Like it's sort of because it positioned itself as like a seasonal side objective that's mostly about farming rewards for the main game, right? It just kind of sidesteps all of these issues. I would never be playing Plunderstorm if there wasn't this renown aspect to it. I would never be playing Plunderstorm if there weren't all of these cosmetics and stuff like that that I could carry over, right? And I don't think I would. I think that that's probably true for quite a lot of people who are playing Plunderstorm. And I also think that I wouldn't be playing Plunderstorm if it wasn't seasonal. If I could go farm these objectives whenever and the game mode was around for whatever, I would just have no motivation to actually sit down and play, right? It is because the game mode is going away in a week. I know there's 6 weeks on the clock. That I'm like putting the time into it. And at the same time, I actually think that I'm having probably a pretty good time with Plunderstorm now because I'm in that honeymoon period with a game where I'm in the first like 10 or 20 hours or something. I'm beginning to get my skills down. I have my meta. I know what I like, right? But I'm not getting bogged down in a true meta game of, looking on Wowhead to see what's best or whatever. Nor am I like contending with, the burnout that comes from hour 100 of a game over the course of a month, right? It's just like all of those things work in its favor to make me not hate the game, even though, like I said before, my core thing is I was pretending I was liking Plunderstorm.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think that you playing duos and trios primarily helps with one of my bigger criticisms in the game, which is like in singles, it feels very RPS rock paper scissorsy, but without an ability to like cover. Like you can't cover all three. It's not three. You can't cover all of the modalities that you need. And so like sometimes you're just in a situation where you lose, right? Like any of the big long windup shots, if the enemy has either repel or like there's a shield ability that'll like block a single attack, that's miserable. Because like even if you hit the skill shot, they'll just block it, right? And like because there's a long windup, you can't really like work around it.
Or if you're sitting on like Earthbreaker and Searing Axe and they have Rime Arrow, you're just going to get plinked down. There's nothing you can do. They are going to constantly keep you at range, keeping you slowed, hitting you with this thing over and over and over again. Yeah, I know exactly what that's like. That is super interesting. Yeah, that is not a thing that happens in duos and trios, because in duos and trios what happens is you kind of have people specialize, right?
Right, yeah.
I'd really like getting into the melee, and so I'll take I like Earthbreaker a lot. I like Searing Axe. I can take Smack Roll. Everybody hates Smack Roll.
I like
I
Smack Roll.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like Smack Roll. Yeah.
Everybody I've ever played with says Smack Roll is bad, and I'm like, fucking, I'll take Smack Roll, right? Like, it has such a low cooldown. Once you get the first stack of it, every other hit does a ton of damage, and so like getting 3 hits with Smack Roll just like owns people.
It's also easier to hit with Smack Roll than there's no wind up, right? Like,
yeah. But then like I play with people who want to do they want to stay at range, right? They want to get Manosphere and Rime Arrow, and they back and they want to be like shooting skill shots from across the map or whatever. And so what'll happen when you're playing in duos and trios, especially because you can kind of like get a whole zone to yourself sometimes, right? I have full cleared Stromguard on numerous occasions just because we're the only team that lands in Stromguard, right? And you come out of there and you've killed however many elites, right? A gazillion different elites. And you come out of there and you can go, oh, you are going to be the ranged person. You're going to drop your Searing Axe. I'm going to take it. I'm going to do Earthbreaker, Searing Axe, whatever, Windstorm, Hunter's Chains or whatever. And you have this like gap closey CC build kind of. And then the other person has like Repel and Lightning Aegis and Storm Archon and, like whatever else. And I don't know. That is a really interesting dynamic that does come out in duos and trios.
Yeah, no, and that makes tons of sense. The only thing I think like feels like absolutely mandatory on everybody is some form of mobility. Like I have had games where like I just didn't get, or like I was like, oh, maybe I'll make this work without mobility, and it never works. Like you always need like something, right? Like even like Hunter's Chain in a pinch, but that's like the worst one from a purely mobility standpoint, right? Like
that's fair. I love Hunter's Chains. No, I will do Hunter's Chains any day of the week, but yes, I don't think of it as mobility.
It's like I like it as well, but like you need at least like what is it, like Fae Form or one of the 2 attacky ones, which is like the Firestorm and like the Wind Slash or something like that.
Oh,
And
really? That's interesting. That's so interesting. I do think Firewall is pretty good just because it does a gazillion damage, especially if you can group people up.
yeah, so
Um,
I don't
but
go
what
on.
is it? Slicing Winds?
Yeah,
What is that?
slicing
What is
wins.
that
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
You think that is that a good ability? Do you think that's a good ability?
Uh, I don't think it's the. I don't think it's particularly good. It's just like a mobility ability if you don't have access to any other one.
Okay, interesting. Sure.
I think it also like the hitbox is weird on that one. I think it only like hits at the end rather than like all the way along the path because I feel like I've dashed through people and not had it hit.
Oh yeah, that's the way I feel like it is supposed to. I've never
Yeah,
actually like read the tooltips for like any of these though.
yeah, no,
I'm just intuiting them on how they work. What is your do you have like a tier list? What's the Plunderstorm tier list for Mango? What's like S tier?
um, S tier. It depends, right? Like this is kind of like this like RPS thing. The Star Bomb is always bad. Like that is like F tier. Just because like in solos you don't have enough CC to lock somebody down for long enough for it to actually ever hit. I assume that works better in multiplayer.
I think of it as pretty bad, all things considered, but yeah, it does work in multiplayer, or it does work better in multiplayer. I also like it better in multiplayer because Starbomb has a really unique positional thing that you can do. For instance, if you're fighting in Stromgarde or Argarok, any place with like dwarves and stuff like that, you can like area deny people by placing a huge star bomb that's really inconvenient, right?
Right.
And it's less about hitting someone because essentially you are using one ability of your 6 total abilities on your squad, right? You can use that to create a positional advantage, right? Without needing the damage of it, because what you're really trying to do is line up a narrow corridor for somebody to land 3 storm archons, right? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it depends on the situation. I would say like I don't think any of them like I find like the kind of triple shot one like the range of elements or whatever that is. I found that to be just
Yeah,
kind of
storm archon.
yeah. I think it's kind of boring. I don't think it's bad. I just don't particularly like it. Um, I find that the leap backwards, leave a mine one is like only ever me like turning around really quickly and using it to launch myself forward because like that's the only mobility I found on the map. Um, Occasionally I've picked it up in kind of like launch backwards to like get away from people builds, like like distance keeping builds, but I think that it's like not the best for like I don't think I ever take that ability because like I don't ever take that ability because I choose to. There are times where I won't drop it because I've got a high enough level of it, but it's not like I think that one's pretty bad. I think the minefield one is very good, but also like a potential trap if you don't have some other form of mobility.
So this is leaving the steel traps that
Yeah,
root people.
just because it
Okay.
roots them for so long.
That thing is so insane. Yeah, and you destroy them with there's a version of things where I get like Earthbreaker in that, and it's just like you absolutely annihilate people because you can guarantee hitting them with the Earthbreaker. You can guarantee hitting them with the axe. I like the axe quite a lot, but I think the axe is only probably good in teams. I bet it's bad solo.
It's not too bad because it's quick enough that it's hard to get out of.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Like Earthbreaker, I think is bad in team in solos because you it's too easy to get out of. I think the flying kick stun one, that one has like weird geometry to it, and I can't figure out like like where you land isn't exactly um easy to determine all the time. Like it's got like some weird landing behavior that I don't quite understand.
Yeah, Quaking Leap. I have never been able to make that one work in my favor. What I want is I want it to launch me up into the air, and then I can kind of directionally place myself so that I can come down at a particular angle, and it never works. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
You launch up into the air, you hover for a second, and then you come down where you aimed initially, which I like is almost always wrong by the point because it's like a second and a half later.
yeah. I mostly use it for chase, right? Like uh what else? Yeah, I mean, I think Rhyme Arrow is an interesting one because it's a guaranteed hit, but it's also like not a ton of damage, right? So like this is
like 6 damage or something.
yeah. And like it's good if you can keep distance, but like and because you don't have to like worry about like missing with it. But if you've got somebody else with like abilities and an ability to close, then you're kind of you're kind of fucked, right? Like you're leaving a lot of damage on the table.
Yeah.
I don't. I think there are combinations that are bad more than there are individual abilities that I think are particularly bad.
Yeah, one of the combinations I love is Fade to Shadow and Earthbreaker. I was using this a ton when I was playing last night, where you Fade to Shadow and you sell you. I only ever see people use Fade to Shadow as a escape tool. Nobody ever uses it as an engagement tool. But the ability to walk into a group of people, stealth, and start casting your Earthbreaker, like I get triple hits all the time with that. Just because like by the time you realize there's a guy right on top of you and he's casting Earthbreaker, it's kind of like too late, right? And I feel like that is the way that you have to make Earthbreaker good. It's like you do that, you do not caltrops, you do the steel traps one is good. You do Hunter's Chain, right? Where you have the Hunter's Chain going, and then you start your Earthbreaker and you run back so that they hit the wall and get ricocheted into the Earthbreaker. It's like that kind of stuff is like you have to be able to combo stuff like that, right? Same thing with the axe, right? The axe on its own, I don't think is very good, but you have to pair it with some other form of CC, gap closer, mobility, whatever, right? Like if I can Fey form in and axe somebody, chase them down and axe them, good. If I can Huntress Chains, good. If I can, whatever, caltrops, like, and then hunter, or I'm sorry, like Searing Axe, good. But if I'm ever in a position where I have like repel and the axe and I don't know, whatever, like Storm Archon, I'm never hitting the axe ever. Everyone's always getting out of that, it feels like.
So I think the combo that works for me with that is Smack Roll and Fire Axe. It's actually one of my favorites, and it works. It works because you can chase really effectively with the Smack Roll, and so eventually they will stop and try and do a longer cast one, and that's when you use the axe because the axe is like it's a long cast, but it's not a very long cast, right? So you've got enough time to kind of like dodge and throw it out and it hit somebody with it, or at least that's my experience.
And it does so much. It might be the highest damage that gets done.
I think Starbomb does more damage, but like again, that never hits. That never hits, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the stuff that I always avoid, I avoid Rhyme Arrow. Not because I think it's bad, it just doesn't like fill my play style. I also tend to avoid Lightning Aegis and Repel, even though I think they're both good, and Repel has saved my bacon quite a lot. It's sort of like those feel like tools built for I don't even know what I would call them. They're play to lose tools. Do you know what I mean? It's like in Magic, you would consider this like reactive tools, right? So like a control deck is full of reactive tools, right? An aggressive deck doesn't have reactive tools because the value of a counter spell in a control deck, even though it could be quite good and it could prevent the board wipe that destroys your momentum, well, actually your aggressive deck would probably be better 99% of the time to have another goblin, right? Because really what you just want is a consistency of offense. And that's a lot of what I tend to be like going for. I want my utility to be offensively motivated rather than like defensively motivated, even if I actually think Repel is, I secretly sort of think Repel is the best of all of the, like, of all of the abilities. I've probably won games because of Repel more than any other single ability I've ever picked.
Yeah, I don't think like I don't think that makes it the best. It's just like there are times when like Repel is not the right choice, like it is not there. It's just like kind of like you don't recognize it, right? Like if it's a game changing thing, it like same thing with Lightning Aegis. Lightning Aegis I think I like a lot because like it gives you that speed boost if you get hit during it. It's just like Repel is good at like keeping people off of you, but like it's also like taking up a slot, right? Like that is part of the issue. Like I really like the Snowfield one. I think that's actually one of my favorite ones.
Oh, interesting.
Just because like
it does. Snowfield one is insane in duos when you can pair it with somebody like if I see someone caught in a snowfield and I start channeling my Earthbreaker, like that person is dead as fuck. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's when it's like really ridiculous. But I almost never carry it myself because I kind of I sort of want a team. I want to combo it with a teammate, right?
Right.
Because you have to cast it. You have to like cast it on top.
You have to hold it, and you have to hold it, right? Yeah. Like you can exit it early, but then you don't get as much slowdown. But it is the it does enough damage, and it's like you can't get out of it, right? Like unlike Earthbreaker, where like theoretically somebody could walk out of it, is hard. I think Fateform's kind of boring, but it's like very good, right? Like it breaks roots, like it just gets you away. It's got a long cooldown, so like I think I like Fade to Shadows a lot too, just because it's kind of got that instantaneously. Like you can do like those kind of like turn around real quick and jump things to confuse people bits that like. But I think mostly everything has place. And like I said, I think Starbomb's problems are probably solved by the group experience, but I think it is absolutely trash in solo.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing that Starbomb is really good for is farming mobs, right? You
Yeah.
gather up a bunch of mobs, you Starbomb them all or whatever. For a while, I sort of thought that was Starbomb's like place and niche. But I think most people probably agree that Starbomb is pretty bad.
I also think it's hard to. I find it hard to farm in I find it hard to gather up things in a large enough area to make Starbomb worth it when like any of the other AoE abilities basically do the same thing, right?
And at a certain point, you're level 5, right? And you're gonna do 3 auto attack cones and clear it all out anyway, right? Like it's like the work you have to go through to run into aggro radiuses of a bunch of different mobs and collect them all into one. It's just like at that point, just hit them with 3 auto attacks and save the cooldown.
Right.
This is actually something that I think is a big thing that I've seen is people using abilities to farm mobs. It feels like is almost always incorrect in the mid to late game.
Mid to late game,
I will watch people spend an ability, like a high value ability, killing a mob, and I'm like, you are dead meat, motherfucker. Let's go. Right. And I try and do it as little as I possibly can, outside of like the pieces of hate, because you have to use abilities if you're gonna fight the pieces.
Yeah, I think the pieces of hate just generally aren't worth it. Like maybe this is another team versus solo thing, but like if no one else is fighting it, it takes so long to kill by yourself, and you don't necessarily get that many rewards out of it, and you're constantly at risk of being third partied, right? Like like you're doing the big obvious thing on the map. Someone's going to walk over and like start fucking on you, or if not, they're going to wait to swoop in afterwards, and like it's just like
it's funny because I have found that doing the big obvious thing on the map is something that a lot of people I think people are risk averse, essentially, right?
Sure.
You'd be surprised the number of times, this is also maybe a duos and trios thing, just like lower density on the map. You'd be surprised the number of times I look at a purple chest across the map and I just book it and run and I get it, and and there are people nearby, but everyone always assumes there's an ambush, right? It's sort of like dropping in Stromgarde. I actually think that a lot of people don't drop in Stromgarde or some of the more high value locations, right? Stromgarde is kind of the most biggest one, but like you could also get the same thing out of Argarok or Hammerfall, right? Because I think people, I was talking to Raylana about this, and she explained, she was like, oh, I have this one drop location that I go to every time because nobody is ever sort of there. And it's like, it's not a bad drop location, right? It is an elite that is kind of on his own, far away from the big concentrated kind of areas of elites, right? It's off to the one side of Argarok, and then you can go west into the mine where there are the kobolds, and then there's Argarok, and then there's kind of like the camp or whatever. I think a lot of people have that philosophy, right? Where their favorite spot to drop is like is built to be out of the way and not one of the big zones where you're just going to get into a bloodbath at level 1.
Yeah, so I don't my Stromgarde's the big castle area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the reason I don't usually do Stromgarde is because like it's easy to get trapped. Like if there is somebody else there. The one I like a lot, and the one that usually has a second person there, is there's like this circle with a wizard tower with 4 elementals that are all elites in a circle.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I love that area, and but that's also where I have encountered people who like I will start I will see them, I will get my thing and start going at them, and they will stand still and be like stop, and then I will kill them.
That's interesting. Yeah, I love the circle of elemental elites. The one to the west of Hammerfall is my favorite because there's those 4, and then there's another 2 right across like the hill. And I always feel this. It's funny because I lost a bunch of fights there last night when we were doing this. But I always feel like I win fights there because it's surrounded by water, so people have a hard time disengaging. If you land on your elite, you collect your skill and you start fighting. A lot of the time, people will like panic. They won't kill the other elites. I have my skill already. I can kill the elites. They run into the water, and now they're just sitting ducks, and I'm like crushing them with Storm Archon or whatever other ability because they're so slow. It's just like, it's like the perfect kill box for like you know, kind of these PvE, I'm just here to farm renown players, right?
Yeah, I was like,
but you can also get fucked, right? Where, you know, like two teams of 3 dropping on the elites at the same time. Those elites have the most damaging kind of abilities because they'll do this thing where they summon like little orbs, right? And they just fly them out, and they're all right on top of each other. So it's really easy to aggro all 4 elites and just have tons of bullet hell kind of like at all times. And it's just like, man, you just need to like take 2 or 3 shots of that for somebody to get a kill on you. Because like you're just not paying a ton of attention to the swirlies on the ground or whatever.
yeah. I think part of the secret to the game too is like aggressive use of barrel, right? Like, you know, just like use barrel early, use barrel often is probably not the right way to put it, but like, you know, use it to get away, and if somebody chases you with it, maybe you figure out a way to get, you know, either force them to spend their barrel and like get them away from whatever they're doing, and mostly they'll leave you alone. I've used barrel to chase. I've used barrel to like just get from one area to another when early on, like it's important to be like getting that density of farming up. So like, you know, if I see an open area, I'll be like, okay, I'm going over there, and I'll just use the barrel if I don't see any other.
That's interesting. I use barrel to chase quite a lot because I think of it as a mobility tool that helps me get into melee sometimes. But like I will barrel into fights in the same way that like you would pop Shirelias in League or something like that, where it's like, okay, here's our engage, let's go, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty. It's uncommon for me to barrel out of situations, but I just feel like because everybody is barrel, people just chase you down anyway, right? But this also, I think, is maybe like a team thing. There's a different dynamic between, you know, we're a 3v3, we killed one of your guys, you are on the back foot, and you're now retreating with barrel. We have such initiative, right? That like it's a lot easier to chase somebody down compared to solo, where committing to a chase like that is actually pretty detrimental a lot of the time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can tell you there are many times where I got into a chase, either as the chaser or the chasee. It's like, well, we spent like 5 minutes doing this chase, and somebody was victorious, but like they're fucked for the rest of the match, right? Like, you know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. One of the things actually we love to do is we do body camping stuff. This is like a loose strategy that I adore. Which is we kill one person and then we kind of like back off a little bit and we wait for their friends to come like resurrect their buddy. And you just collapse and you get the team kill, right? It's funny because like I think of this as being, it's not even that I'm necessarily PvP minded. I probably am PvP minded. I bet that the people I played with would probably say that I'm an overly aggressive player in Plunderstorm, but I just feel like you have to kill people to get plunder, right? You know, if you sit there and you farm, if you had the whole map and you could just sit there and farm all day, I actually kind of think that your plunder like per minute is pretty
Well,
low.
I think if you're gonna do that, you drop, you finish your quest, and then you immediately die.
Yeah.
You just go again, right? Because like that's the only thing that's like worth doing.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying a premium on that. You're paying like a 2-minute premium to like sit in the queue and get through the thing and then actually drop and do the like sort of like the farm or whatever. But I feel like the kind of way the game is sort of designed is that you're supposed to complete your quest, get this kind of like basis of like 500 or 700 plunder or whatever. But then once you start fighting, this is when you can get like we got 2,500 plunder. We came in like second or something like that, and we killed 3 teams and got to just steal all of that stuff, right? Like that is how that's how like one 15-minute game becomes an entire level of, right?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's I would say that like, what was it? In terms of like, kind of some of this little bit more meta stuff. I think if this was going to be a long term, like I've heard rumors that like maybe this is a test for like some more involved mode. They let Proletariat like actually build an engine for instead of like slapping it together in WoW. I think they need like I have no reason to play at this point, right? Like I'm 40. It's not even getting like a nominal gold reward or anything, right? Like which could be useful or something. What else was I gonna say? I don't know. I thought it was a neat experiment, but I don't think I think if it was like every patch there's a new season of Plunderstorm, I think that would get old real fast.
Interesting. I feel like I would like it if every hold on. How would I pitch that? Because I think my default would be that, yeah, I actually would be happy to see Plunderstorm. If Plunderstorm came back for 6 weeks once a season, a season lasts 4 to 6 months, right? If Plunderstorm came back once a season for 6 weeks, but it had half as many levels of renown, there's kind of a pool of abilities that shuffles in and out, and the
Yeah,
zone
I
is
can see
different
that.
every time. I think I could be okay with it.
Yeah, I can
For
see
instance,
that.
they said that the very first iteration of Plunderstorm was on Trustfar, and I was like, oh my god, you could have Plunderstorm in any map, like any area of the map that you wanted, essentially, right? If you have a cool area where you can make stuff, like you can make stuff happen. I think that there would be a lot of interest in that, and I especially think that there would be a lot of interest in like, I think about like the default loadout having the barrel makes a lot of sense for the open plane of Arathi, right? But in Drosvar, there's a lot of verticality, right? There's kind of a huge cliff that splits half the map, right? Well, imagine instead of having a barrel, you had what the apex line. You remember the apex lines that like
Yeah.
take you up and let you sort of redeploy again? It'd be like that, right? Where it's like, oh, I need to get on the other side of this cliff. I'm gonna pop into the air and zoop down, and kind of like reset my position or whatever. And I bet you could have a lot of fun with like stuff like that. That's like, oh, if you want to do a, like a redeploy, if you want to escape somebody, right? You can just pop into the air. Maybe you're vulnerable for like a second or two. They can try and get their kill off, right? But otherwise, you get to get out scot free. I think I would be okay with a lot of different sort of iterations of that, as long as the sort of mechanics of it really did sort of I don't know, like change style
Yeah.
wise.
No, I think I agree. Like if there was enough iteration, I think it'd be like enough kind of like turnover in mechanics. I think it could be fun. I'm not gonna.
I actually sort of wonder if there would be value in integrating more of sort of true WoW PvP in like the game, right? Like what if you had auto attack, right? Instead of these cones, right? What if you had I don't know. I don't really know what I'm sort of
Yeah,
saying, but
I. It's interesting because it is effectively a melee BR, right? Like that things work a little bit differently, right? Like the reason like some of this redeploy stuff works in Apex is you can shoot people out of the sky, right? Like if you're willing to take the risk and you have the right guns for it. Whereas like there's nothing in the game right now that would be able to deal with that, right? Like you could not snipe someone from across the map effectively.
yeah, that's true.
Um, yeah, I've been I don't know. Like I said, I'm happy I did it. I guess I'm glad to get the extra tender for the pass, right? Like that's
Hell yeah, the tendies, let's go.
yeah. But I don't know. Like, I would jump on to play with you guys just to like experience it. But like, I'm not going back to Plunderstorm on my own for it. Like, there's like one. I think it's bad enough that like I'm not going to do it on my own for fun, and like, there's no reason to, right? Like,
I feel like from the perspective of the WoW team, they would consider that a success, though.
yeah,
right?
that's
Somebody
fair.
who farmed out the entirety of the thing and then didn't play it again. That's probably what.
Oh
they
yeah,
want.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like the? I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
I was just say like I think if it wants to be like a more fully featured, like if it wants to be like a more permanent mode, then it needs to be like not in the WoW engine, essentially.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's funny. I feel like with more time, with more polish, maybe you could make it happen.
I think part of the problem is that fundamentally WoW is built around having these kind of like soft edges around things, these like fuzzy lines, because it's primarily a PvE game, and you want to be a little bit forgiving, and especially when the game was started, right? Like latency wasn't as reliable as it is now, right? So like the little cheats you do to make, yeah, like tab target MMOs, most of the time you don't have to check for a skill shot, because like it's almost all or most abilities are just are kind of like automatic hits, right? And I think that does not serve a BR well for like a long term project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. When it comes to sort of like the experimental nature of WoW, is your mind brimming with other experiments? Do you want to see WoW make Plunderstorm versions of other sorts of games?
No, because it will be in the WoW engine.
Yeah, I mean, because they have there's some data mining suggesting that there is a there's data mining suggesting that there's a Vampire Survivors kind of game mode that's coming to, like that's coming and in this sort of like mindset, right? And I bet I could get on board with some level of a number of these sorts of, like, oh, I would understand. I actually think that technically speaking, I bet people would have enjoyed Torghast mode if it was more built from the ground up to be this kind of roguelike rather than being like a thing deeply integrated into the core of WoW itself.
Yeah,
right?
I could see that.
Like if you had a seasonal sort of like Torghast mode where you are playing kind of this true roguelike, you're picking up abilities. You could even do some of the stuff with like classes or whatever else, right? But like, I don't know. There would probably be more interest in like that kind of thing. And I also think that you could probably bring back some of the less successful WoW modes, like Warfronts, in this sort of engine. That would be satisfying to like work around and sort of like play with, right? I think in a world where Warfronts don't have to conform so one-to-one with like a traditional sort of like World of Warcraft gate, like I don't know, like play style, right? You could probably find some interesting stuff to do there. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like a lot of these things just feel like we built a thing in WoW in kind of the same way. It's like you could run Doom on like on a toaster, right? Like it feels like you could play a BR in WoW, right? Like that's the kind of like attitude I get out of it. It's like it's neat, but it very clearly feels tacked on top of WoW instead of being like its own thing that kind of like holds on its own.
Okay.
Very
yeah. Cool. What do you think about Panda? Do you know about Panda Remix yet?
Yeah, I did see that. I think it'll be interesting, right? Like I'm interested to see if I care enough to actually do that. I famously I don't do alts, but I wonder if it's the type of thing where like at the end of this, like end of the Panda part, it like rolls into roll like the character can roll into retail. But it's neat. I think it's cool looking. What do you think?
I am truly. I feel very vindicated, I guess is what I would say, I think, because this is something that I have been sort of asking for a long time, I guess. And this sort of like seasonal character stuff, but it is so much more advanced than I ever sort of expected. And I really wonder how that's going to end kind of like playing out. Like when I was thinking about this, I was thinking that, level a new character, right? But it wouldn't include stuff like raids, it would include stuff like dungeons. But part of this is that like it's almost like Season of Discovery, right? Like you can get gems that have abilities on them, so you could get like Vanish as a priest or as a warrior. You could get Door of Shadows. You get a bunch of different sort of like utility abilities or whatever. And just like the power that you can give yourself in order to do stuff feels pretty I don't know, interesting, crazy. I kind of wonder how all that stuff is going to end up playing out. And I also think the most crazy thing is going to be the cosmetics, right? The ability to buy high-end in-demand Pandaria cosmetics is really a game changer. WoW is really um I have had friends who have sat there and farmed the Shaw of Anger for the the heavenly onyx cloud serpent, right? And it's just like, holy shit, you can just buy that, and it'll cost a lot of the bronze, right? Like whatever the stuff that you make, you don't make gold in this, you make bronze, and the bronze it gets is what you buy with all these kind of is what you use to buy all the cosmetics and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. My expectations for this are sky high, okay? And if it falls short, I'm unsubscribing. I'm never playing this dog shit game ever again. Okay?
Go back to LOL.
Yeah, listen, go back to a good game, okay? Like League of Legends.
All right, well, what else have you been up to? I mean, it's been like
it's fun. You described this sort of way that you've been playing WoW, and I'm sort of honestly jealous because I have a lot of different games that are all pulling my attention, and kind of none of them are WoW. I have been playing Plunderstorm just because like I kind of have to, right? Like I
Right.
sort of have to like kick it into gear in order to, it's 8 days left, right? I have 20 levels to go, so I have to get 3 levels a day, in order to get to the, in order to get to the promised land of renown 40. So anyway, but the games that have been pulling for my attention, honestly, some of these are mainstays that I'm sure you would expect. The new Total War Warhammer 3 DLC got announced, Thrones of Decay. I'm incredibly hyped for it. Did you watch the trailer?
No.
I have watched the trailer so many times, Mango. It's so hard to explain how awesome I find some of this stuff. It's just like, I love that game so much. I love that game so fucking much. And there are some things in that trailer that are just the stupidest, most joyful thing I have ever experienced in like a game trailer for the dumbest possible reasons, right? There's a shot in the trailer. So Thrones of Decay is an update for Nurgle, it's an update for the Empire, it's an update for dwarfs, right? And there was a lot of questions on what is going to come to, like what are like the units or whatever. There's a moment in the game where a thunder barge, which is like a dwarven airship that has a bunch of cannons facing down and a bunch of handgunners who are just like shooting, where the camera sort of zooms through a dwarven airship while kind of like a brief refrain of a dwarven drinking song plays. And I'm just like, it is like a fist pumping hell yeah moment, because you watch there are some dwarves in the back of the ship and they're just drinking beer. They're just drinking beer in the middle of this battle, and you're just like, that's awesome, right? There's a part where Marienburg land ships, which is a unit that is the dumbest. It is a ship that is put on wheels. Okay, the Marienburg land ships roll into combat, and you're just like, how is this a thing that is happening in my game, Total War Warhammer 3? So I'm super hyped for that. I've been playing it again just because I'm doing that thing where I'm playing the game because I'm hyped for the new piece of content, even though the new piece of content is not out. Are you looking at a Marienburg
I
land
am.
ship? Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? But that moment in the trailer when they come out is so fucking cool, right? Oh god, they're so stupid. What a stupid fucking unit.
You've been playing Helldivers as
so
well, right?
And also, yeah, so also I've been playing a ton of Helldivers. We've gotten to Helldive difficulty. It's fun. It's hard. I feel very good at the game, and that's also incredibly, like whatever. They have just updated the game to actually include a bunch of sort of neat upgrades and stuff like that. I had kind of reached the end of I had bought all the stratagems, I had bought most of the ship upgrades, but they added a new tier of ship upgrades now, that I really want, because I don't know, they use like abilities that I think are like dumb and fun. We've made some stupid sort of hero plays that are really great and a lot of fun, and I'm super I don't know, interested in them. And Ever After Falls is the other one. Ever After Falls has actually kind of been like my mainstay for sort of quite a while. Ever After Falls is one of the games that we're publishing, and I just needed to understand the way a mechanic worked. But because of how these Stardew games work, right, you need to invest like a ton of hours, right?
Sure.
Every day is 20 minutes, right? Ish. Every day is 20 minutes. So that means an hour is 3 days. 10 hours is a season, right? And there's 4 seasons in a year, and it's just like it is an easy game to sink an insane amount of time into. And so
That
I've just
makes
been
sense.
sinking an insane amount of time into it. Especially because I've also been playing co-op with Rachel, and co-op is also like a lot of fun. And then also there's a Stardew update, and so I've been playing Stardew Valley with people. So it's just like all of these different games have been pulling my attention, and I haven't made really any progress on the platinum achievement or a ton of progress on Plunderstorm until this week. Okay, it's happening this week. Plus, there's a new Battleground season, Hearthstone Battlegrounds, that I want to play. I don't know. I'm honestly a little afraid that I burned myself out on Warcraft. I told myself that I was going to lay off WoW, and I was going to come back to it in season 4 and like go really hard in season 4 again. But I'm a little afraid that season 4 comes around. It's next week, right? Next week. And I'm just like not going to care. We'll see.
Yeah. No, makes sense. On my end of things, like I said, I've been working on this platinum achievement. I've got I got some tips for you. Basically, I was like, I don't know when they're gonna get rid of this, so I'm just gonna do it like because there's like parts of it that are like time gated, right? The most annoying, like I could be done with it as early as Tuesday, if the right world crest rolls, which is like the thing that's kind of infuriating.
No way.
Yeah. So the ones that were annoying were the what's it called the keys, not the keys, the key. So you end up getting a lot of keys.
Scrolls?
But the scrolls, yes, thank you, the scrolls.
Yeah, okay.
There's this thing you do where essentially you can buy an item that will increase the scroll drop rate. You need 50 scrolls, and so basically you join a group that is farming in the Frost Vault. You pop one of these scrolls, you kill things for like 5 to 10 minutes, and you don't loot anything because the buff disappears when you get a scroll, but it's only when you actually do the looting. So you have the increased drop rate as long as you don't loot a scroll. So you've got a pile of enemies on the floor, you'll pick up like 4 or 5 scrolls. It's great. And so that one was like just kind of like, that was actually not the most annoying. The most annoying one, okay, so in order, just in order of things that are obtuse rather than hard. So there is a achievement for outside of the Froststone Vaults, killing a storm leader of each element. Now, these spawn every other hour on the hour, right? So on for me, it's on the odd hours. But if there's an existing storm there, it won't spawn a new one. So if it's coming up on the spawn time and the storm that's already there is not one that you need to go kill that one real fast. That way you can potentially get a draw at another one. That one was just annoying because like I just was like not hitting the storm I needed, and it took like a couple of days of watching it pretty consistently. I started this one before they added this thing, but there's these elemental storms, right? And when they came out, there were 2 apiece. Then there was 1, and they added it back to 2, I think, because people complained. But it's kill 200 enemies of each of the elements in each of the zones, right? So it's 16.
But they have to. This thing, I tried farming this thing, and I wanted to kill myself. It's only when they're empowered by the element, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I hate that.
It's like, but it's only they're empowered by the element as long as you're like in that zone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So here are the nuances for people that don't know.
Sure.
So the primalists don't count because they're new enemies that are brought in. They are not empowered by the element. They are like the primalists and like the bigger constructs. They don't do anything, right? Like they don't give you any credit towards it. It's the normal enemies that will like get a couple new abilities. Those are the ones you have to kill. In basically, so they're like, it takes 15, I think to 30 minutes maybe on the outside to get your 200 kills. It's not that hard. It depends on where you are. Like if you are there's one zone in Thaldraszus that is tier hold. You want to go to like the shelves, like with the entrance to like the halls of the blind or whatever that is. And you just want to kill those shelves. You want to like run up and down the shelves, and within like 1.5 clears of that, you'll be good. You want to do this on war mode so that there's nobody else there. Like sometimes there's like an alliance fuck that'll come bother you, but like basically you'll be alone and you won't have to fight people for mobs.
Okay, wow, this is actually changing my whole fucking life. Here's what I did. I was like, oh, I need to do this. It was like a storm, like an air storm in the elite area of the Waking Shore. Okay.
They're always in elite areas.
Basically.
Really? Yeah. They're not, there's different densities of non-elite enemies, but it's the Nokud hold in ONR and Plains. It's tier hold in Thaldraszus, which is an elite area. It is either the Obsidian hold or the other fire one in the northern part, or the third one is, I forget where the third one is in the Waking Shores, but it's also an elite area. Okay. And then it's the Null area or the
Vakthros on the far east side of the map, I'm sure.
No.
Spin.
It's the
Imbu, the
yeah,
southern.
it's Imbu, and then it's also the Cobalt, like the Cobalt arena or whatever it's called.
The Cobalt Assembly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
Which Obsidian Hold and Cobalt Assembly are good if you need those reps, right? Like, or if you need to. Obsidian Hold was annoying because you have to like do the 4 different greater key things. Like you have to get them. You have to do the 4 encounters that spawn when you give them like 20 keys, right? Like you don't have to do those by yourself, but it's good for grinding those elements out if you have them. But they're also probably the worst ones for like actually doing it efficiently. But anyway, you were saying you went to the elite area in the weekend.
I was in that elite area and I didn't think about it. I was just sitting there and I was killing mobs. I was maybe doing this for like 45 minutes. And I was like, how have I not killed? I've killed so many fucking mobs. And I looked and I had like 76 mobs killed. And I was like, what the fuck? And that's when I realized it's only when they have the little buff.
Right.
And it destroyed me. I logged off. I was like, I'm never fucking playing this game again. Because it's just like I felt like such a waste of my time.
Yeah. You have to cotton onto that nuance. It's like an area around, right? Like this is a funny one. There are a couple of mobs in Tierhold and in the Obsidian Hold. Like, cause it's like not the main Obsidian Hold area, it's like the mountain up the side that gets the area. There are a couple that are right on the border, but you can pull them into the radius and they will become empowered by the storm and you can get the kill that way. It's not worth it doing it large scale, but like for like a couple different mobs, if you just tag them and they walk in, it's worth like waiting, like the 5 seconds for them to walk in to get the kill. Very specifically in Tierhold, on the shelves, the rightmost alcoves, they're like non-elites in like the back. And at the very back on the right side, they're not within the range. But if they walk forward like 5 steps, they're in range and they'll get the buff and they'll count.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I would recommend tracking the particular achievement you are going for, just so you have a running counter.
Yeah, I have started doing that, or not started doing that. When I realized this thing about the 76, I was like, I just need to track this so I can see it, and that's how I figured it out. Okay. Yeah. Super interesting.
Those spawn every 3 hours. And because you need like 16 the combinatorics work out, you'll end up hunting them for a while. The one that I found personally most frustrating is getting all the Bakar and Spirit Eagle customizations in the Grand Hunts. Not because doing the hunts are particularly hard. It's like I had one left and it took me like 20 or 25, I think, Grand Hunts to get yeah.
Oh my god! Wow.
So people like
there are groups for these. I'm sure you're joining Grand Hunt groups.
So I did not, but I played it off of War Mode, and there were enough people around that I didn't have to do it myself. So like that worked out well enough. Okay. But there probably are. You should probably do that.
Yeah, I have done quite a lot of the hunts, to be honest with you, because I was using them to farm renown in the beginning of the thing. But I bet I'm missing a couple of those customizations.
I know you have a lot of alts, which helps. The appearances are shared account wide, but the weekly the better drops have a slightly higher chance of giving you the customization.
Oh, so doing it on different characters theoretically gives you more of a chance. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I don't have alts, so I just ground it all out on Billabong, right? And like I said, I had one of them, and I did like 20 of them over like 3 different sessions. I was like, fuck, right? Like, and Thaldraszus is probably the best one for this. Oh, this is the other thing, is you need one in every area. So, Hemet Nessingwary is around each of the hunts, and you need to talk to him to get one of the other achievements.
Okay.
Go look it up on Wowhead, find his location. Apparently, there might be a trick with the Northern Thaldraszus spot. Like, there's a note on their comments saying that like something comes and kills him if you don't get there fast enough. That creature never showed up when I went to it, so maybe I got lucky. But the one I am waiting on is the 2 I am waiting on is one. You can only get like 30-ish doors a week in the reach. And word to the wise, if there is a crossbow, there's like a ballista room that'll like open a door across the way for you. That won't count. So if you just want to get like your number to tick up, don't use the ballista. So I will finish that this week just because like I need the time to burn out. And then there is for the the catalog, the cataloger, the Pokemon Snap game, you need the special stone that will like make the like special characters appear. You need to take pictures of each one of them, and so I have all of them except for Nat Pagel, which is the middle of the Oenarm Plains.
Oh, I actually think I just have those naturally because I used to do those world quests a lot.
Yeah,
Funnily enough.
Well, the thing is you can finish the raft ride. Like you can get enough percentage before you ever pass them, so you might just not have them, right? Like if you were good enough. Like so, I think especially the ones that are making shores, they're like a little bit further down the raft path. So like if you theoretically,
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Because like Oculith, I have some of these memorized. Like I know where Oculith, he's on your left as you come down in the Azure Span, right? There's the one where you're in the air balloon and Rathion flies by. It's just like
but like Chen Stormstout, I think is one of them. He's a little bit further down. And the secret part is apparently I have never been on a ride where one hasn't spawned, but apparently they don't always spawn. But you can like re-ride the ride, just like jump off and get back on.
Yeah, I have seen that happen on a number of different occasions.
Yeah, but you just like you don't want to finish the quest if that's the case, right?
You have to do one of every world quest, right? This is the one that everyone is complaining about, that the world quest ones.
If that is one, I had that one naturally. The big ones that I had to do that are just like straight time gated were 8 Dormy dailies, 8 unique ones, but they don't seem to repeat super often. And all of the dailies for the Dragonlings, and also the whole quest line for the Dragonlings.
Which I haven't done any of that.
And it's so the one that's a pain about the Dragonling Wings too is that it's like every day you get a new step, right? So you have to do it day by day. Like you can't just bum rush it. And those were not super hard to collect because the hardest part of that was just like I wanted to get gold on all of those races, and some of the like they're a neat twist on the dragon races because they all have different abilities. Like you're racing as a Dragonlings and they do things differently than like your standard Dragonling racer or Dragon racer. And getting gold on Positris was annoying, but otherwise it was fairly easy.
Yeah, because you only need bronze. You just need to do them, right?
Yeah, you don't even. Yeah, I would say like I guess you need bronze in the sense that like you can't get below bronze, but like you just need to finish each of them. What else? Yeah, I basically just like burned through a lot of that, right? Like doing obsidian keys in the group would be helpful. I managed to find a couple of times where like there were a bunch of progress on the meters already, because like getting 20 keys is a pain in the ass, right? So finding one with like 13 and dumping 7 and still not the best, but like doable.
I've also done a lot of those from when I was farming the Obsidian Rest way in the beginning of the expansion, so I bet I have a couple of.
Yeah. And also each week your first one has to go to either Sibelian or
Rathion to like unlock it. Yeah. Honestly, I think I just have some of them in my inventory just from having like been in that area. There's a while where I was farming the special blacksmithing recipe. I must have gotten 1 million.
Yeah. Well, I would say if you've got that, then that's easy. And then there are other ones, like there are other things like that I did along the way, right? Like like when you're doing the elemental storm in the Nakud hold, you will get a set of the Nakud like armor that lets you disguise the Nakud, and then you can go do the training course, which is like an easy achievement. Or like this is the one that you actually have to do, which is like legendary with Dormy. Easy enough to do. Every hour you can like get like 300 to 500 rep by just like doing the time rift group.
You can also do it on it. See, this is one of the alt ones because you do the first time you do it on every week, you get 1,000 and it's account bound, so you can just do it on a different character, send it to your main.
That makes sense. One of the things that I found annoying was I don't really do pets, but like you need to get all of the pets from Dormy, like from the time rift area. So after you grind up a bunch of rep, you'll have a bunch of paracausal flakes. But I was using it to get appearances, and then after I got all the appearances, I realized you could transmute those into like the Raid Finder appearances for season 2. So I was buying them again to go transmute them at the transmuter. Like I have ended up with like a full set of the season 2 Raid Finder transmog, the elemental storm transmogs, just because like
the one I was doing for the season 2 was dream searches. You can spend those dream search things on tokens at like the druids, and then you can zap those to turn them into Raid Finder appearances.
Yeah.
So I picked up a bunch of sets that way.
I would say both Dream Finder and Time Rift do that. Actually, the only one you can't easily get Raid Finder on is the season 1. It's like the season 1 gear, which makes me sad because that's the one I want. Because it's like a teal color, and that's like I like that. But
is it coming back for season 4? Do you know what your appearance is for season 4?
I don't know. I have not been paying attention to any of that.
I don't know. Honestly, me neither. But I tell myself that I'm gonna care about some of this stuff in season 4. All I know is that the Arms Warrior tier set bonus is the season 1 tier set bonus, which is a little bit different than what we've done previously.
Yeah. I hope it's the same one because it's just like I hope it's the current one for monks, just because it was like I think the most interesting. The rest of them are just kind of like keep doing your rotation, and like you'll occasionally get like an extra benefit versus this one, which like actually changes the way you play the class a little bit.
Let me just see. I wonder what it is. These monk all the way down. Windwalker, Fist of Fury increases the damage up by your next 2 rising sun kicks or spinning crane kicks by 30%. You know what that is?
That's I think the season 2 one.
Okay.
It's the season 2 or the season 1 one. It's not.
Fist of Fury now enhances 3 rising sun kicks, enhances kick damage. Your next Fist of Fury deals by 5% stacking times.
Yeah, I think that's the season 2 one, which is much less interesting than this one. But it's simpler, which is maybe why they're doing it that way. What was I gonna say? Otherwise, I've been playing a bunch of Cyberpunk, a bunch of Dragon's Dogma 2, which I've been enjoying. A bunch of Balatro. Balatro has become my like easy like throwaway 15-minute game.
I've heard a lot about that. Yeah, it was. It really came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
Balatro.
I mean, it's just poker hands, right? Like that's what makes it so easy, right? Like it's like it's poker. It's poker with a twist, essentially. And you make big number, and it feel good, and it's roguelite, so you can just like be like, I need to spend 15 minutes. But yeah. Last week, the reason we didn't have an episode last week is I was in Vermont for the eclipse, which was super fun.
Yeah, what did you think about the eclipse? Was it was it just cool?
Yeah, no, I mean this is my second eclipse, second full solar eclipse. My girlfriend hadn't seen one, and she was very awestruck by it. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as the first time, but I still thought it was very, very cool. Me and my girlfriend are already talking about maybe going to like Iceland for the one in 2026. It's not coming back to the States until 2040s. It's going to be Greenland, Iceland, and Spain in 2026.
Okay.
But it was super fun. I'd highly recommend it if anybody watching has access to the path of totality. Like the difference between 97% and totality is so big, right? Like like the actually seeing the ring is, I think, worth it, and like so much different than like looking through your glasses at like the partially obscured sun. It's one of those things where like the first time I saw it, it's like, oh, you understand why people thought the world was ending. You understand why people thought that God was angry, right?
Yeah.
Like,
no, there's it's funny because maybe Carl Sagan said this, maybe Isaac Asimov said this. Some astronomer said that the total solar eclipse is such a unique phenomenon in the cosmos that if aliens were real, they would come to Earth just to see the like cosmological accident of a total solar eclipse. And I don't know, for some reason I've always sort of thought of that as
for those of you at home that don't know, the reason a solar eclipse works is because the moon is at the perfect distance to completely by perspective completely overlap the sun, with just a little bit of a ring around it, right? Like that is like total shit. There's nothing about the universe that means that it has to be that way. It just happened to work out, right? Like somebody.
Well, it's because we have such a huge moon. This is
Yeah.
I think this is why I don't know that I believe this, right? But I think this is why there's like life on, right? You know, the thing that is cosmologically significant about the planet Earth is that we're in whatever that band is called, where water is water. It's not ice or it's not steam. And we have a moon that is so huge that we can have tidal movements or whatever. So much of sort of like our the if you this also comes from Isaac Asimov, where he sort of talked about if you believe that life is scientifically inevitable under a given set of circumstances, but it is so rare that we've never encountered it in all of our entire existence, right? What you have to do is filter for what makes the Earth so unique, right? And the answer is we're in the band, we have this huge moon. These are the two things that make the Earth so wildly like cosmologically, whatever. And I've always thought that was actually that makes like a ton of sense for why, it like solves like the Fermi paradox stuff, right? That the reason there's life on planet Earth is because of this huge, insane moon that is such a rarity among planets, even planets that are in this band of our size with continents and oceans and all this other sort of stuff, and like that are tectonically active, right? That's another point of it. You have to have a tectonically active planet, unlike Mars, which is tectonically inactive. All of that stuff has to be true, but there are a ton of planets just on the math of it that make that the case. The thing that like drives that number so low is the huge moon.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that was like one of the other solutions to the Fermi paradox is like we just happen to be early, right? Like we might be like the first or one of the first, intelligent life forms to have evolved, and that's part of it, right? Like is like these unique factors that make life more likely to have, like if you have to like bang a rock together like 10 million times until the spark hits, right? Like it's 1 million instead of 100 million on Earth, right? And like maybe that's why like we won the lottery first. If that
also interstellar travel is impossible is the other thing, right? Yeah. That the speed of light is truly a barrier that can never be broken, and it would be ridiculous to assume that there is any sort of interstellar travel that could be whatever carried out to colonize planets that are like the tyranny of distance, right?
Yeah.
Some Derps talk about the Fermi paradox.
Yeah, well, as either Helldivers and or Warhammer 40K teaches us, like this was the thing, right? Like somebody posted a picture of like a solar eclipse from like Jupiter or something, right? And it's just like this little potato in front of the sun that's like not really anything, right? Like and somebody's like, this is why Earth is number one and why you kill the bugs, right? Like
this is why you kill Xenos. I am becoming more and more enamored with part of this is that I actually I think a Total War Warhammer 40K is going to be announced next year, and maybe 2 years from now, and it'll come out, and it's going to be like the next big thing that I'm going to get obsessed with or whatever. Because obviously I love Warhammer Fantasy, but I have been thinking a lot more about. But my slow roll into Warhammer 40K lore is ongoing. More and more every day.
Imperium of Mankind. Yeah.
Yeah, there are female custodes, Adeptus custodes right now. This is like the big.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's like the dumb culture war nonsense that for a long time everybody thought it was only men were in the
by canon it was only men. And this is like this is a retcon, right? Like this is like the more reasonable complaint I saw was like you could have done it where you just like roll two organizations together and like call them both like you didn't have to retcon it. There's like another group of female.
Yeah, there's the Sisters of Battle, I think is what they're called, who are also essentially like an Adeptus. The Adeptus are not Space Marines, but they're like kind of proto Space Marines. They have been genetically engineered and stuff. I don't understand fucking 40K lore. All I know is that like Chuds on Twitter got mad about it. There's a very funny video of a guy with like honestly thousands of dollars worth of like painted beautiful Warhammer, and he like throws them against the wall. I was just like, oh my god, because it's like, yeah, no, it's like watching conservatives burn their Keurig machines or whatever.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah, no, like I said, the best complaint I heard about it is like it would have been easy, or it would have been plausible to like roll the Sisters of Battles into the Custodes and be like, they are now all the Custodes, and so now there are female Adeptus Custodes. Whereas like the thing that the official Warhammer account tweeted as a response is there have always been female Adeptus Custodes, which has not been true until like, you know, yesterday, which is,
yeah,
you know, fine, right? But like, you know, you didn't have to do it that way, essentially. But you know, that I think part of the underlying thing for this too is like there was very recently a reaffirmation that all Space Marines are male, which was like seen as a like the same thing but in the opposite direction, right? Like, you know, like seen as a victory by the people who like that kind of thing, and seen as like, you know, like a terrible thing by the people who hate that kind of thing. So
honestly, Helldivers has sort of ruined me for this discourse, because I don't know. I just think that people have a really poor understanding of sort of like, you know, what really kind of comes down to at the end of the day, it's this inability to like not moralize everything.
Yeah.
Your life or whatever. I resent both people who are essentially saying that, oh, it's important. I don't know. It's important that Helldivers and Warhammer are satire so that you can pretend to enjoy fascism without enjoying fascism, right? Or whatever. And it's like, man, you know what, man? Like, if you think some stupid fucking kid is going to become fascist because of playing like Helldivers, like, please jump off a cliff. Like, that is a completely illogical, unreasonable position to actually earnestly hold about like the media that like we could. It's, you know what it is. I used to complain about this. I've complained about this on the podcast. It's like the Jezebel understanding of feminism. This is sort of like the culture war understanding of culture issues, right? Like the reason that some of this stuff is like bad or insidious or whatever is so much more nuanced than just depicting the thing bad equals product bad, because that's never the case. And it's just like, it's such a reductive way to look at the world. I am so over all of this.
Yeah, I mean, you are one of the people that introduced me to kind of like the core concept of the death of the author. And at that point, it's like all bets are off, right? Doesn't matter how much you intend it to be satire, right? Like, you know, people are going to take from it what they want to take from it, right? Like,
yeah, yep.
But
and it's just like, I'm finding ammo for these kinds of battles to fight is something I am distinctly uninterested in, I think.
Like, there's like a long running argument about whether like one of the war chiefs is supposed to be like Margaret Thatcher, like for the orcs. Yeah, it's like if you like pronounce it, like if you like pronounce like Margaret Thatcher, like something like that, like maybe, and then like there's maybe that's true, maybe that's not. Let me see if I can find it.
Gazkul Thraka's full name is a reference to Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, but there's an argument as to whether that's real or not, or whether
it's not. It's long been thought of as an urban legend, but it was debunked by Andy Chambers, who said the name came about during roleplay sessions. It was never anything to do with Thatcher.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, who knows? Like there's still people who argue like he's not the authority on it, right? Like, who cares? Like ultimately, who cares? But like, you know,
yeah. What an ultimately who cares? True.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Mag Uruk Thraka equals big orc leader.
Yeah, but that's like maybe Margaret Thatcher, right? Like, because like, you know, this comes about like around the Thatcherite times, right? Like,
yeah, we worked out basic orcish based on the bits of Black speech in Lord of the Rings, so we could communicate without the adventurers understanding what we said. In that framework, yeah, Mag Uruk Thraka is big. Okay, interesting. Listen, Tolkien was satirizing Margaret Thatcher in the 50s when she was a child, right?
Oy.
Actually, I don't know if she was a child in the 60s. She probably was old enough.
I was like,
what was Margaret Thatcher's age?
Also, like, you know, if you go into the analysis of Lord of the Rings, right, it's like, you know, maybe it's just kind of like a, you know, like an eco-terrorist, you know, novel, right? Like you could take it from that perspective as well.
You know what's funny? ContraPoints made a video about this. that I will shout out here because it was great. It was on Twilight. It was on the nature of Twilight. And she has this whole section of things where she talks about how people will morally condemn Twilight because of lines that you and I have heard of and probably made, right? Like there's a line where Robert Pattinson says, "I like watching you sleep." And people go, "Oh, that's, this, he's a stalker. This is like stalker behavior or whatever." And like Controversies has to go, it's a fantasy, right? This stuff is fantasy. In the same way that we don't think that like guys who play Helldivers and want to experience the glory of, completing the mission after the Super Destroyer has left and there's no chance of extraction, right? They don't actually want to sacrifice themselves for the cause. They just want the fantasy of like that level of honor and glory, right? People like women who like the idea of having like a benevolent watcher figure who is there, who is always like looking out for them and protecting them, right? That's like a comforting fantasy, right? And we need to essentially stop thinking that everything that happens in every work of literature is one-to-one literal, because it's not, and that's ridiculous. And it's just like, that's my position. Okay. That's where I come down.
Yep. No, I mean, I agree, right? Like,
listen, you know what? Aragorn is the one true king, and that means that J.R.R. Tolkien was a monarchist, okay?
Yeah.
And he wanted to abolish Parliament, you guys.
Man, I saw a thing about that was like, about like, Tolkien and the noble spirit, and like, and how like George R.R. Martin is a hack, because all he is doing is just trying to like shit on that. It's like, I don't know about that. Who cares, right? Like,
I mean, like, I could have a lot of discussion, I feel like, along a lot of these lines, right? Because I both appreciate J.R.R. Tolkien's sort of optimism and George R.R. Martin's sort of pragmatism, right? You would to Steelman sort of like both sides, right? Or realism, maybe you would kind of like say. There's a lot, I feel like, to be said about like really earnest, sincere works that are not built on kind of a cynicism or like a pessimism, right? Like this is what I think works about like Titanic, right? Or Avatar. Like these are, straightforward, earnest stories about, whatever, hope and honor and nobility and altruism and all this other sort of stuff. And there's no cynicism undercutting it, any of that kind of stuff. And I feel like if I were to kind of put a finger on the pulse of like the current zeitgeist, I might say that there's a little bit too much cynicism these days and not enough sort of optimism.
I would say we've talked about this. I do want to push back a bit against calling it realism, just because like I know that that's like maybe like, what is it? Somebody I was
like a loaded political term.
Yeah, I would say somebody said that like, a realist is somebody who lost like a political battle, right? Like, like they just like call it realism, right? Like, because like, they lost and they want to be like, meh, right? Like, like it is cynicism. And I don't think it's any more realistic to assume maximum cynicism than it is to assume maximum optimism. Right?
Yeah. And the other thing that bothers me about this when it comes to like George R.R. Martin is that there's this idea that like Game of Thrones is like a deeply sort of like cynical bad guys win, when like I actually think that there's a lot more optimism in Game of Thrones that people give credit for, especially given, our understanding of like the show or whatever, right? Like Cersei Lannister dies. The bad guys lose.
The good bad guys lose. Good guys win, right? Like,
yeah, exactly, right. And like, yeah, sure, Ned Stark gets his head cut off, and that sucks, and right, and like sometimes the dice kind of like fall that way, right? But I don't know, whatever. We don't have to get into that in the back half. 15 minutes over in the back half of a podcast about Plunderstorm. Okay. Shit, I didn't get to talk about my D&D stuff. I have so much D&D stuff I want to talk to you about. I will leave you with this teaser. Maybe we can do an episode on this or something. I am trying to make a procedurally generated story with the 7th Expedition. And I'm pretty excited to sort of like test it out. We haven't really like gotten to that kind of point because we've only sort of done like some session 0 stuff. But I've been going back and reading old articles from the Angry GM. He talks about travel and the tension pool, which I really love the concept of, and I'm borrowing pretty heavy from, and some sort of like other stuff to make the feeling of like a sandbox where you can just sort of do whatever you, right? Kind of like a reality that also includes a real story that is happening in each of the, you know, kind of like areas of the map that I'm exploring.
Have you tried running anything through like an LLM? Like trying to like use that to like generate anything?
Oh, no. No.
This was like an early use case that people were fooling around with, like generate like either generate the outline of a story or like write a dungeon, right? And like,
Oh, interesting.
and it doesn't work 100%, right? Like, one of my buddies was telling me this, like, yeah, and so like as soon as like there was some guy who was doing this like a project, it's like as soon as he got a climb speed, the LLM started putting traps on the ceiling. Um, so so it needs like a guiding hand, but like, you know, there's stuff there, right? Like especially like when you said procedurally generated, it's like, well, if you wanted to like on the fly come up with something very quickly, right? Like I don't think you could do it like while the session was happening, but you could do it like, you know, as part of your session prep is like, you know, what are some ideas here, right? And like go that way. Right?
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, the procedural generation I'm talking about is I have defined elements of the story that are happening, but the order in which the players discover that stuff and get to piece the puzzle together is up to them. And a lot of it comes out of stuff like it's essentially okay. I'm a little worried about saying too much because obviously players who are in this game listen to the podcast, so yeah. I don't want to go too into detail, but the core of it is that when players land, there are some hexes on the maps. The whole map is divided into sort of like sub-regions that are like you know, it's like a forest, a desert, right, a jungle, this kind of stuff. There are some places on that map that have discrete locations where real things have happened, right? And there are some locations on that map that are theoretically kind of empty, but when you walk onto them, you roll what's called a discovery die, and the discovery die kind of chooses for you what is in that zone. What is the neat little thing that's in that zone, right? And I wrote a million things that can be on these discovery dice, essentially. And so the players are going to have this sort of thing where they are they're uncovering the story, but theoretically kind of in a wild sort of like order, right? And figuring out if it will work or if that's stupid is going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, that sounds super cool, and I would love to hear more about it. Probably next time.
Okay.
What does your shirt say?
This is a Final Fantasy shirt. I beat
Tsukuyomi?
Tsukuyomi. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can fucking read. You guys.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to say, if you'd like to email us about any things we talked about in this podcast, you can email us at derpsgames@gmail.com or podcast some derpsplaygames.com. You can follow us at twitch.tv/derpsplaygames or youtube.com/derpsplaygames, where these go out live. Links for everything are down in the description. Rate, review us wherever you find podcasts. But do you have anything you're looking to promote?
I have nothing that I'm looking to promote.
In that case, I'm going to say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.